My name is David, and until a few months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. At 40, I built a life most would envy, a thriving architectural firm in Chicago, a beautiful home in Lincoln Park, 2 kids, Sophie, 12, and Ethan, 10, and a wife, Emily, who I believed was my partner in every sense. 15 years of marriage, countless late-night sketching designs while she climbed the corporate ladder in marketing, and a shared dream of growing old together. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Or so I thought. The cracks started small, almost invisible. Emily began staying late at work, her phone buzzing at odd hours. She'd laugh it off, saying it was a big campaign, but her eyes darted away when I asked for details. She stopped lingering in bed on weekends, her warmth replaced by a quick peck before she'd vanish into her phone. I told myself it was stress, maybe a midlife crisis. But doubt is a seed, and once it's planted, it grows. It was a Tuesday night in October when the seed sprouted. Emily was in the shower, her laptop open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping, not really. I just needed to check an email, and her screen was closer than mine. But there it was, a notification from a messaging app one didn't recognize. A name, Mark. A preview. Last night was incredible. When can I see you again? My stomach dropped. I clicked, my hands shaking. The messages were a gut punch, flirty, intimate, unmistakable. Miss you already, she'd written. You make me feel alive, he'd replied. I scrolled until I couldn't breathe, each word a betrayal. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. My mind was a storm of rage and disbelief, but I needed proof, something undeniable. The next day, I called a private investigator, a guy named Vince with a gruff voice and no-nonsense attitude. Give me a week, he said. I spent that week in a haze, playing the dutiful husband while watching Emily's every move. She was so calm, so normal, kissing the kids goodnight, laughing at my lame jokes. It made me sick. Vince delivered on the 6th day. Photos of Emily and Mark at a downtown hotel, his hand on her waist. A video of them in a parked car, her head on his shoulder. Receipts from dinners I never knew about. It was real, and it was worse than I'd imagined. I sat in my office, staring at the evidence, my world crumbling. I'd given her everything, my trust, my dreams, my years. And she'd traded it for this. That night, I waited until the kids were asleep. Emily was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, a glass of wine in hand. I stood in the doorway, the folder from Vince heavy in my grip. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. She looked up, her smile fading. I laid the photos on the coffee table, one by one, like cards in a losing hand. Her face went pale, but she didn't flinch. David, you're overreacting, she said, her voice sharp. This is nothing. You're paranoid. Paranoid? The word hit like a slap. I pointed to the photos, the messages, the dates. Explain this then. She stammered, her excuses unraveling. It was just a fling, she said. Stress relief. It didn't mean anything. But her eyes were cold, calculating, like she was already planning her next move. I'm done, I said, the words heavier than I expected. I want a divorce. For a moment, she was silent, her lips pressed tight. Then she leaned back, her voice low and venomous. Fine, but don't think you're walking away with everything. I built this life with you, David. I deserve half of it, maybe more. Half. The house we'd spent years renovating. The savings we'd scraped together. My firm, the one I'd poured my soul into while she chased her career. The thought of her taking it, after what she'd done, was unbearable. But her words weren't a threat, they were a declaration of war. I saw it in her eyes. She wasn't just fighting for money. She was fighting to win. I walked away, my heart pounding. That night, I slept in the guest room, the photos still burned into my mind. I didn't know how ugly this would get, but I knew one thing. Emily wasn't the woman I married. And whatever came next, I'd fight with everything I had to protect what was mine. The days after I told Emily I wanted a divorce blurred into a haze of anger and strategy. I barely slept, my mind racing with questions. How had I missed the signs? How could she betray me like this? And most importantly, how was I going to protect what I'd built from her grasp? Emily's threat to take half of everything wasn't just words, it was a promise. I can see it in the way she carried herself now, her chin high, her eyes sharp, like a predator sizing up its prey. This wasn't the woman I'd loved for 15 years. This was someone new, someone ruthless. I needed help, and I needed it fast. On a friend's recommendation, I hired Rebecca Klein, a divorce attorney with a reputation for being a pit bull in the courtroom. Her office in the Loop was sleek, all glass and steel, but her demeanor was anything but cold. David, she said, leaning across her desk, Illinois is a no-fault divorce state. Her affair won't sway the judge much when it comes to dividing assets. But we can fight smart. Tell me everything. I spilled it all, the messages, the photos, Vince's evidence. Rebecca nodded, jotting notes. We'll use the affair to build a narrative, but our real leverage is in the finances. We need to know exactly what she's got and what she's hiding. Emily didn't waste time either. Within a week, I was served papers. Her attorney, a shark named Victor Hargrove, was notorious for dragging cases out until his opponents broke. The demands were staggering. Half the house, half our savings, half my firm's equity, even a chunk of my 401k. She wanted alimony, too, claiming she'd sacrificed her career to support me. Sacrificed? I nearly laughed. She'd climbed to VP at her marketing firm while I worked nights to keep my business afloat. The audacity of it burned. Rebecca pushed me to dig deeper. If she's this bold, she's either desperate or hiding something, she said. I hired Vince again, this time to track Emily's finances. Meanwhile, I poured over bank statements, credit card bills, anything I could access. That's when I noticed it. A series of transfers, small but regular, from our joint savings to an account I didn't recognize. Thousands of dollars, siphoned off over months. When I showed Rebecca, her eyes narrowed. This could be our edge. Let's find out where that money's going. But the legal fight was only half the battle. At home, things were falling apart. Emily was still living in the house. Neither of us could afford to move out yet, and the tension was suffocating. We barely spoke, communicating through curt texts about the kids' schedules. Sophie and Ethan sensed something was wrong. Why are you and Mom so mad? Ethan asked one night, his voice small. I wanted to tell him the truth, to scream that his mother had broken our family, but I swallowed it. We're just working through some stuff, buddy, I lied. It felt like betrayal, shielding her sins. Emily, though, had no such restraint. She started planting seeds with the kids, subtle at first. Your dad's too busy with work, she'd say, or he doesn't understand how hard I try. Sophie, always quick to pick up on moods, started giving me the silent treatment. Ethan clung to me more, confused and scared. I felt like I was losing them, too, and it gutted me. Emily wasn't just after my money, she was rewriting our story, painting me as the villain. Then Vince called with a bombshell. The account Emily had been funneling money to? It was linked to Mark, her lover. They've been moving cash around for months, Vince said. Looks like she's building a nest egg, maybe planning to bolt. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my pulse pounding. She wasn't just cheating, she was scheming, long before I'd caught her. The realization hit hard. This wasn't a fling gone wrong. Emily had been planning her exit, and I was the fool who didn't see it. I showed Rebecca the evidence. This is good, she said, a spark in her eyes. If we can prove she's hiding assets, it could shift the whole case. But we need more: bank records, transaction logs, maybe even Mark's involvement. She warned me it wouldn't be easy. Hargrove would fight dirty, and Emily would double down. Are you ready for this, David? She asked. I nodded, but inside, I wasn't sure. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone who'd stop at nothing to take me down. And as I drove home, the weight of it settled in. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a war, and I had no idea how far she'd go to win. The Cook County Courthouse was a monolith of gray stone, its halls echoing with the clack of heels and the murmur of nervous voices. I sat on a hard bench outside courtroom 12, my tie too tight, my palms slick with sweat. It was early December, 2 months since I'd confronted Emily, and today was the first major hearing in our divorce. Rebecca sat beside me, flipping through her notes, her calm a stark contrast to the storm in my chest. Stay focused, she whispered. Let me handle Hargrove. Just tell the truth. I nodded, but the truth felt like a weapon that could cut both ways. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, all darkwood and fluorescent lights. The judge, a woman in her 50s named Margaret Ellison, had a no-nonsense air, her sharp eyes scanning the room like she could see through lies. Emily sat across the aisle with Hargrove, her face a mask of composure. She wore a tailored suit, her hair pulled back, every inch the wronged wife. It made my blood boil. How could she sit there, so poised, after what she'd done? Hargrove opened with a salvo, painting Emily as the backbone of our marriage. My client sacrificed her own ambitions to support Mr. Carter's career, he said, his voice smooth as silk. She managed the household, raised their children, and deserves an equitable share of their assets. Equitable? I wanted to scream. She'd been sleeping with Mark while I was designing buildings to pay our mortgage. Rebecca leaned over, her voice low. He's laying groundwork. Let him talk. When it was Rebecca's turn, she didn't hold back. Your Honor, Ms. Carter's contributions are not in dispute, but her fidelity is. We have evidence of an extramarital affair, which speaks to her character and intentions. She slid Vince's photos across the table, Emily and Mark at the hotel, in the car, at dinner. Hargrove objected, calling it irrelevant, and Judge Ellison agreed. Illinois law doesn't penalize infidelity in asset division, she said, her tone final. Move on, Miss Klein. I felt the air leave my lungs. If her affair didn't matter, what chance did I have? But Rebecca pivoted. Then let's talk finances, she said. She presented bank records showing the transfers from our joint account to the mysterious one linked to Mark. Ms. Carter has been siphoning funds, tens of thousands of dollars, without my client's knowledge. We believe she's concealing assets. The courtroom went quiet. Emily's face tightened, just for a second, but I saw it. Hargrove jumped up, claiming the transfers were for investment opportunities, but Judge Ellison wasn't buying it. I want documentation, she said. Every transaction, every account. Next hearing. Outside, in the hallway, Emily cornered me. The kids were with my sister for the day, so it was just us, the air thick with tension. You think you're so clever, don't you? She hissed, her voice low. Drag this out, David, and I'll make sure you lose everything, your money, your firm, even the kids. Her words hit like a punch. The kids. She knew exactly where to aim. I stepped closer, my voice steady despite the rage. You're the one who broke this family, Emily. Not me. She smirked, turning away, but I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. Back at Rebecca's office, we regrouped. The financial angle was our best shot, but it was shaky. If we can prove she's hiding money, we can argue bad faith, Rebecca said. It might not get you everything, but it'll tip the scales. Vince was still digging, and he'd found something new. Emails between Emily and Mark, buried in an old account she thought I'd never access. They're talking about securing the future, Vince said. Dates back a year. She was planning this, man, way before you caught her. A year. The words sank in, heavy and cold. Emily hadn't just cheated. She'd been orchestrating her exit while I was still kissing her goodnight. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. But those emails were gold. Rebecca's eyes lit up as she read them. This shows intent, she said. If we can tie it to the transfers, we've got her. But Hargrove would fight tooth and nail, and Emily was slippery. I could feel the case teetering, like a tightrope over a chasm. That night, I sat in my home office, the house silent except for the hum of the heater. Sophie and Ethan were asleep, but I couldn't face them. Sophie had asked why I was being mean to Mom, and I didn't have an answer that wouldn't shatter her. I opened my laptop, staring at the emails Vince had sent. One line from Emily to Mark stuck out. Once this is over, we'll be set. Set for what? A new life? A clean slate? Or something worse? The question gnawed at me, and as I closed the laptop, I knew one thing. Whatever Emily was hiding, it was bigger than I'd imagined, and I was running out of time to find out. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker by January, each hearing tighter, each exchange sharper. I sat in the same hard pew, my suit wrinkled from restless nights, watching Judge Ellison's pen scratch across her notes. The air was thick with unspoken stakes, my home, my firm, my kid's future, all hanging on the edge of a legal knife. Rebecca had warned me this would be a marathon, not a sprint, but I was running on fumes. Emily, across the aisle, looked untouched, her cool facade a constant jab at my fraying nerves. How did she do it? How did she sit there, knowing what she'd done, and still play the victim? Today's hearing was about the money trail. Rebecca called a witness, a former colleague of Emily's named Lisa, who'd seen her with Mark at company events. They weren't discreet, Lisa said, her voice steady. Everyone knew something was going on. Hargrove pounced, twisting her words to paint me as a neglectful husband who'd driven Emily into Mark's arms. Mr. Carter was consumed by his work, he said, his tone dripping with mock sympathy. Is it any wonder Miss Carter sought companionship? I gripped the table, my knuckles white. Rebecca shot me a look. Stay calm. But calm was a distant memory. The real bombshell came when Rebecca presented the financial expert's report. A forensic accountant, a wiry man named Dr. Patel, testified that the account linked to Mark was tied to an offshore entity in the Caymans. Ms. Carter transferred over $120,000 in the past year, he said, pointing to a chart of transactions. The account's ownership is obscured, but the timing aligns with her correspondence with Mr. Reynolds. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even Judge Ellison leaned forward, her brow furrowed. Hargrove objected, calling it speculative, but the judge wasn't having it. "I want a full audit," she ordered. "Every penny accounted for." Emily's mask slipped for a moment, her lips tightening. I caught her glance at Hargrove, a silent plea, but he was already scrambling. Rebecca leaned over, whispering, "We've got her rattled. This is our shot." But I wasn't so sure. Emily was a strategist, always 3 steps ahead. If she'd hidden money offshore, she'd have a plan to cover it. And Hargrove was too slick to let this bury her without a fight. Outside the courtroom, the personal toll was mounting. My firm was bleeding clients, my focus shot from endless legal prep. Sophie barely spoke to me now, her eyes cold when I picked her up from school. Ethan was clingier, asking questions I couldn't answer. "Is Mom leaving us?" he'd whispered one night. I hugged him, muttering reassurances, but the truth was I didn't know what Emily was capable of anymore. She'd moved to a rental nearby, claiming it was for the kids, but I suspected it was to keep up appearances in court. Every interaction felt like a chess move. Then Vince called with a game changer. "Your boy Mark's not just a side piece," he said, his voice low. "He's got ties to a shady investment group, some kind of Ponzi scheme, from what I can tell. Emily's money might be wrapped up in it." My heart raced. A Ponzi scheme? Was she that reckless? Or was she in deeper than I'd thought? Vince sent me a file, emails, bank records, even a photo of Mark meeting with a known fraudster. If she's laundering money through him, Vince said, this could blow her case wide open. I showed Rebecca the file, and her eyes lit up. "This is huge, David. If we can prove she's tied to fraud, it's not just bad faith, it's criminal. But it's risky. We need Mark on the stand to confirm it, and he's a wild card." The idea of calling Mark terrified me. What if he lied? What if he doubled down to protect Emily? But Rebecca was adamant. "We subpoena him. Force his hand." The decision weighed on me. That night, I sat in my office, the house dark except for the glow of my laptop. The kids were with Emily, and the silence was deafening. I opened the latest email from Vince, a single line from Emily to Mark. "No matter what, we can't let him find out." Find out what? The money? The scheme? Or something worse? My mind spun with possibilities, each darker than the last. I was close to unraveling her plan, but every step felt like walking a minefield. One wrong move, and I'd lose everything. Rebecca prepped me for the next hearing, where Mark would testify. "He's our leverage," she said. "But he's also a liability. If he cracks, we win. If he lies, we're back to square one." I nodded, but my gut churned. Emily's threat in the hallway echoed in my mind. "I'll make sure you lose everything." She wasn't bluffing. And as I stared at the photo of her and Mark, laughing in some hotel bar, I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power, revenge, and a secret I was only beginning to grasp. The courtroom felt different that February morning, charged with a tension that made my skin prickle. It was the final hearing, the moment where everything, my home, my firm, my kids' trust, would be decided. Judge Ellison's gavel fell like a hammer, silencing the murmurs. I sat beside Rebecca, my heart pounding, my eyes locked on Mark Reynolds as he took the stand. He was slick in a tailored suit, but his hands fidgeted, betraying nerves. Emily sat rigid, her face a mask, but I caught the way her eyes darted to Mark. This was it, the pivot point of our war. Rebecca didn't waste time. "Mr. Reynolds," she began, her voice sharp, "can you confirm your relationship with Miss Carter?" Mark hesitated, glancing at Hargrove, who gave a subtle nod. "We were friends," he said. "Close friends." Rebecca pounced, presenting the photos, the emails, the hotel receipts. "This looks like more than friendship. Care to explain?" The courtroom held its breath. Mark squirmed, his confidence cracking. "It was personal," he admitted, his voice low. Hargrove objected, but Judge Ellison overruled. "Answer the question." Rebecca pushed harder, laying out the financial trail. "You received over $120,000 from an account tied to Ms. Carter, funneled through an offshore entity. What was the purpose?" Mark's eyes widened, sweat beading on his forehead. "It was an investment," he stammered. "A business opportunity." Rebecca slid a document across the table, Vince's file on the Ponzi scheme. "This business? A known fraudulent operation you're linked to?" The room erupted in whispers. Hargrove shot to his feet, but Rebecca was relentless. "Did Ms. Carter know the money was funding a scam?" Mark broke. "She knew," he blurted, his voice shaking. "She wanted out of the marriage, said she needed to secure her future. I told her the investment was safe, but it wasn't." The words hung in the air, a death knell. Emily's face went white, her hands gripping the table. Hargrove tried to redirect, painting Mark as an unreliable liar, but the damage was done. Judge Ellison's eyes narrowed, her pen scratching furiously. I felt a surge of hope, but it was tempered by dread. What else had Emily planned? Rebecca closed with a final blow, presenting emails where Emily instructed Mark to keep the transfers quiet and make sure David suspects nothing. This isn't just infidelity, Rebecca said. It's calculated deception, Your Honor. Ms. Carter hid assets, engaged in fraud, and attempted to defraud my client of his rightful share. Judge Ellison called for a recess to review the evidence, and I stepped into the hallway, my legs shaky. Emily avoided my gaze, but Hargrove was whispering furiously in her ear. She looked cornered, but I knew better than to underestimate her. The verdict came 2 weeks later. Judge Ellison's voice was steady as she ruled. Ms. Carter's actions constitute bad faith, she said. Her concealment of assets and involvement in fraudulent activity cannot be ignored. I was awarded the house, my firm, and the bulk of our savings. Emily received a smaller share, some investments and her personal accounts, but no alimony. Custody was joint, but the kids would live primarily with me. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. Sophie's cold stares and Ethan's confusion lingered in my mind. I'd won the battle, but the war for my family was far from over. That night, I sat in the living room, the house too quiet without the kids. They were with Emily for the weekend, and I was alone with my thoughts. I'd kept what was mine, but at what cost? My marriage was a lie, my kids were caught in the crossfire, and my trust in people was shattered. I thought of Mark's testimony, how he'd crumbled, and Emily's face as her plan unraveled. She'd moved to a condo downtown, and word was she and Mark had split. He'd turned on her in court, and she'd cut him loose. It should have felt like justice, but it didn't. Then, as I poured a glass of whiskey, the mail arrived. Among the bills was a plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper, typed and signed. You think you won, David, but this is only the beginning. My blood ran cold. It was her, had to be. But what did it mean? A threat? A taunt? I called Rebecca, who urged me to file it with the court, but there was no proof it was Emily. I stared at the note, my mind racing. I'd fought for my life, my future, and I'd won. But as I sat in the dark, the words echoed, only the beginning. And for the first time in months, I wasn't sure what I was fighting for anymore.